Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Kiyan.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where we're scared of literally everything because this week we watched Night Terrors.
Written by Mark Gatiss.
Directed by Richard Clark.
And aired on September 3rd, 2011.
Not just 2 days after... No, just
What?
8 days before 9/11. I was thought.
The 10th anniversary of.
Yeah, 10th anniversary of. Not the actual event, 9/11. That happened in 2001. Anyway. Night Terrors, Mark Gatiss making his triumphant return after one season away. He was there in Victory of the Daleks. It actually wasn't that long ago, though it feels like a couple months. It feels like years, actually, since we had a Mark Gatiss story. It was
a couple months.
I was going to say, it feels like a really long time since we had a Mark Gatiss story.
Yeah, good old Mark Gatiss. Always a strong deliverer. Sometimes a strong deliverer.
I was immediately skeptical of that statement. Well, so basically, when he was coming up with the plot for this episode, he's like, I want to draw on fear.
Her.
No, not fear her, although there are a lot of similarities between this and that episode.
My first note is this going to be like Fear Her?
Wow, my 6th or 7th note was, this reminds me of Fear Her.
This isn't in
probably not a good thing.
No, this isn't in the league of like Fear Her and Love and Monsters, though.
Well, no.
It's significantly like a step above. Just maybe like one step, but a significant step.
Basically, Mark Gatiss had apparently worked on a horror series for BBC set in like a really normal house. He wanted to do something similar, and Moffat was like, that'd be a great idea for a Doctor Who episode. So he wanted to do this idea where he wanted it to be at like a psychiatry conference and people get trapped, and then Moffat was like, we got Toby Woodhouse writing a story that sounds a lot like that, and he was first, so sorry,
really?
Mark.
Huh. That's really interesting.
And Mark was like, okay, well then I'll deal with childhood fears instead of adult fears. Moffat was like, why don't you set in an apartment complex then? I'm starting to realize, looking up all these behind-the-scenes things, that Stephen Moffat seems to suggest a lot of these plot ideas to these writers.
You didn't notice that? I mean, we've joked about this before.
I mean, I noticed it, but I'm starting to notice that it's like a lot more prevalent than I thought it was.
Like, I mean, just going back, Vincent and the Doctor, first one that comes to mind, which he sort of stepped in, almost rewrote that story, or at least a lot of it. And that's been the case for a lot of episodes. Yeah. He's a lot more hands-on than we saw. Than Russell T was.
Interesting. I have no further comment on that except interesting. And then he was like, okay, I'm going to deal with childhood fears. And we'll set an apartment complex. And that was it. That was it. He was like,
went from there.
Well, he was like, he wanted to draw on a lot of his own childhood fears, which apparently included toys. That was an actual childhood fear of Mark Gatiss's, apparently.
Yeah, this episode actually really reminded me of something Stephen King would write, although not nearly as like scary as it would have been if he had
there is
written
that
it, like
Shining reference with the twin girls.
Yeah. There is. I don't know if that was. I didn't see that was a Shining reference, but yeah,
I'm pretty sure it is.
Could have been. There's a Stephen King story called. I think it's just called The Monkey, and it's about a toy monkey that
is possessed.
I guess. I mean, it's a typical Stephen King like ending where it's like, I have no idea if that was supernatural or not, but people died. Actually, that's not true. Like, some of Stephen King's stories are explicitly supernatural. Some of them are explicitly not, and some of them walk that fine line. Yep.
I don't really think. I haven't read any Stephen King stories, so I'm not qualified to comment on this.
I'm sure you've watched movies based on Stephen King.
I've watched things based on Stephen King's things, but I've never read any of his stories. I've watched Under the Dome.
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, you're going to get educated today. Under the Dome was a TV show based on a Stephen King novel called Under the Dome, which is about a little town which all of a sudden one day just a dome, like a force field kind of dome, materializes around the town. And
it's like a Simpsons movie.
They have to like survive under the dome because the dome allows air in but doesn't allow like anything solid or liquid and anything else in. So they can breathe, but they have to like survive inside the dome, cut off from the outside world.
Yeah,
the dome is like translucent too, so they can see out and in, but like it's impenetrable.
Huh. It's really interesting.
TV show was not great. I'm sure the book is much better because as far as I know, Stephen King is actually an accomplished writer. The TV show was not great.
I mean, he's definitely the biggest writer who's like alive right now. Like actually the number one writer.
Maybe
in
George
terms of like
R.
sales.
Martin.
In terms of sales, I'm pretty sure.
Well, in terms of sales, Stephen King would win because he's written like 1 billion books.
He wrote The Shining.
Yeah, I know
the
that.
book that The Shining was based on.
Yeah, I know that. He also wrote It.
Yeah.
And Carrie.
Yeah.
So
that bear scene in the have you watched The Shining?
I have not actually.
Well,
but I know the scene you're talking about.
Yeah, there's a scene in the movie. I'll just explain this. There's a scene in the movie where there's this like zoom in on this like guy in a bear suit, which is a dropped subplot that was in the book, but they included just that one scene in the movie.
Of course they did. He also wrote The Mist, I think. Is that what that one was called?
He wrote the Dark Tower thing, which was recently just adapted into a probably really crappy TV show.
Movie.
All right.
Had Matthew McConaughey and Idris Elba, and I heard it wasn't that great. Anyway, back to the story at hand. This story was originally intended to be in the spot occupied by Curse of the Black Spot, but then Moffat was like, "We have a really dark starting to the season, so how about we move it?" Was it Curse of the Black Spot? Maybe this was somewhere else, but anyway, he moved it. This was supposed to be episode 4. What was episode 4? It wasn't Curse of the Black Spot, was it?
I don't remember. Was it the Rebel Flesh and the Almost People?
He shifted everything around because he moved.
There was a lot of shifting.
Because Doctor's wife was supposed to be here, I think, and he moved that to where that's what it was. He moved this to the end because it was super dark, and he moved Curse of the Black Spot up one, and then bumped Doctor's wife in.
Yeah, and that's why they had to like rewrite some of the references in Doctor's wife.
Right.
Even though Amy was flesh. I suspect, I'm going to say it now because if I don't, I'll forget, but I suspect there's still something going on with Amy because at the end the Doctor sits down with Amy and Rory and he's like, all three of us back together in the flesh.
Oh, that line specifically was actually left over from when this was episode 4. So that line was supposed to be a reference to her being flesh.
Wow.
But then because they moved it, they didn't cut that line. Yeah, that line actually survived from the first draft.
Yeah, if you couldn't tell, I forgot to look up production for this.
Me too. I just looked it up now right before we recorded. Anyway, also in the original draft, the dolls were completely silent, but then Steven was like, this episode kind of sucks with the dolls silent. There's like no tension at all. There's kind of crappy dolls that kind of like move really jankily. And
the doll.
And Gatiss is like, okay, well, I'll write lyrics for a nursery rhyme they can sing, and the nursery rhyme alludes to the Doctor's death.
And just death in general in like multiple different lines.
The final verse definitely says, tick-tock goes the clock until the Doctor dies or something like that.
And zooms in on his like death certificate.
I thought the words were different, and then I remembered that a different version of the final verse of the nursery rhyme appears later in the season, and I was almost going to talk about that, but then I realized the different verse is a huge spoiler that I'm not going to talk about.
Do it.
No. Anyway, the story begins with a little boy.
Spoiled little brat.
Kind of, yeah, actually. And
in some ways. I mean, well, he's sort of OCD, right? He wants his mom to turn the lights on and off before she leaves.
5 times specifically, which is a very OCD thing, having these patterns. And I don't know if this is true, but I feel like it's interesting that part of the reason why people with OCD develop these patterns is because it makes them feel like they can exert some control over things in their life. But anyway.
It makes sense that this kid would be doing this.
Yeah. And I actually thought maybe at the start of this that maybe like the point of this was going to be Mark Gatiss exploring like a mental illness like that, but it actually goes like a completely different direction than that. But
also, I mean, kind of similar to Fear Her, touching on these real world things, right? Like Fear Her had the the domestic abuse,
right?
This one has the OCD stuff a little bit, or the fear of like a kid being taken away from his parents.
Yeah, which is a common.
I mean, it's legitimate if you literally overhear your parents talking about sending you away.
Yeah,
which he does right now.
Yeah, well, the mom tells him, because he's scared of something. She's like, well, what do we do with the things we're scared of? And He's like,
You
put him in the closet.
and never think about them and never confront them.
Yeah, which is not great advice. You should confront your fears head on and defeat them. I don't know if that's sound advice either, actually. Consult your therapist. But yeah, the mom kind of talks with the dad. The head names.
Alex was the dad. George was the child.
Yeah, those are the two I remember.
Name. The mom's not that important.
The mom barely appears because she leaves now. She talks with Alex and is like, hey, maybe we should find a doctor. And the kid starts saying, like, please save me from the monsters, please save me from the monsters, please save me from the monsters over and over and over again. And then it pops up on the doctor's psychic paper. And he's like, please save me from the monsters.
Right. And the kid's flashing a flashlight on and off.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like creepy shadow puppets on the wall, probably made by the extensive amount of toys he has on the floor.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be the case.
Yeah. He has like 2 Optimus Primes.
Wow.
Questioned where all the Decepticons were. Maybe this kid deserves what's happening to him. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
The Autobots were better anyway. Actually, that's not true. The Decepticons turned into the cooler vehicles.
Starscream.
Starscream was a literal Air Force jet. Yeah. What is Optimus Prime? A freaking big rig truck?
A fire truck. Lame.
Megatron was
a tank.
Megatron was a tank.
How did the Decepticons fail so much? Maybe it was because of the Dinobots.
Maybe it was because of their ineffective leadership. Why are we talking about this? If the Decepticons had someone like Optimus Prime, they would have won. Anyway. The doctor's like, well, I haven't done this in a while. And Amy and Roy are like, what? And the doctor's like, make a house call. I'm like, haha, that's one of those classic Mark Gatiss jokes that he thinks is really clever, but is like actually like not that clever.
I didn't even register on my scale as a joke, so there you go.
So that says all you need to say about it.
So they get to this apartment complex, but it's huge. They don't know where the distress call is coming from. Oh, actually, before that, when they first show up, Rory goes, "No offense, doctor," and the doctor's like, "Well, then, so by that you mean all of the offense, or something along those lines." I like that. Just liked how they pointed out that when someone says "no offense," they're about to say something freaking offensive. So.
Yeah, no offense, but I don't like watermelon seeds. I just tried to think of the
time that someone has ever said that without saying anything offensive afterwards.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the least controversial thing to say after that. It's kind of like how when someone says, "I'm not racist," but, and it's like, well, okay, well, you're going to say something super racist now, right? Aren't you?
Did you hear that song, a couple months ago when it first came out? I'm not a racist, whatever it was. No, it's pretty viral.
I didn't actually.
It's pretty viral.
Wow, I must have been under a rock.
Even I heard it. And
wow,
I don't hear
that's
anything.
A miracle. I must have been really out of it when it came out then. But anyway, yeah, they go into this apartment complex and they start just cold calling people, basically.
Yeah, and this is like Kafka's The Trial, except 10,000 times creepier. No, I'm just kidding. There's a scene in The Trial by Franz Kafka where the guy, I forget his name, I think it's just Joseph K., gets called into his trial, which is at this apartment complex, but he doesn't know exactly where it is, and he goes door to door pretending to be someone who he's not to try and find out which room his trial is in. And as with everything Kafka writes, it gets very uncanny. But this actually captures that feeling very well. I don't like using the term Kafkaesque because people just throw it around willy-nilly.
But I feel like this is one of the few cases in which it would be truly applicable.
I wouldn't say so. Because even if it's similar, I don't think it actually, captures what's going on in Kafka.
Well, just wait for that Kafkaesque episode of Doctor Who where the Doctor transforms into a butterfly then.
Really? Does that happen?
No.
One of the only shows I think I've watched, I'll say shows and movies because literature maybe sometimes captures it a little bit better. One of the only shows I've watched that I would describe as Kafkaesque is The Prisoner. Only some episodes, but yeah.
I wouldn't describe anything I've seen as Kafkaesque off the top of my head. So, Anyway,
They're going around door to door.
they're doing the thing that I hate is knock on your door and like, hey, we're with the blank association of blank. And it's like, okay, well, I don't care. I just close my door. But these people are like actually really nice because they hear out the Dr. Amy and Roy for their long, like 3-minute BS session where they
Rory's the worst at it, honestly. He's just like, I'm here from the
social services.
He had no plan going into this. He did not prepare a single word.
He got the worst person too because he
got Purcell.
the landlord. And the guy's like, yeah, I'm the landlord. Wouldn't you know that if you're from the like society? He's like, for community betterment. And he's like,
yeah, I was just testing you, you know? No, he doesn't say that.
He kind of implies it though. He's like, yeah, I knew that.
I forget what Amy says, but the doctor just does his thing. He's just, I'm the doctor.
And his grandma's like, look, I need new bins. And he's like, what? She's like, I can't carry the bins downstairs. I need new bins.
Turns out to almost be the death of her, to be honest. So maybe this episode is more dark than we're giving it credit for.
No, this episode's super dark. I don't know why you'd ever call this episode not dark.
I didn't call it that dark. I don't know, it just felt so whimsical in times.
I think this episode's pretty dark.
Those dolls chasing you around with the knives.
It's pretty dark.
The impending death, around every corner. Pretty fun times.
I'm making a confused face.
Anyway, Amy's whole spiel, I guess, is just like, hey, has anything weird been happening? And they're like, yeah, you coming to our door and asking all these questions. But this is when that Shining-esque scene happens where the door opens a little bit more and there's another girl.
Yeah, there's two little twins.
And all of a sudden, Amy's on a trike. No.
Well, her and Roy are walking, and the doctor kind of looks across the apartment complex and sees this boy sticking his face out a window, and the doctor immediately figures out that this must be the boy who called him.
Yeah.
And he basically sends Amy and Roy down a floor, and the elevator falls.
He tries to get them out of his hair for a while. So they go into the elevator. Little do they know it's the Tower of Terror from Disneyland. So they remodeled into
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mission Breakout, I think it's called.
Yeah. I've actually been on that ride, sadly.
What do you mean, sadly? I seem to remember you telling me it was better.
Yeah, it was, but it's Disneyland, so it's like enforced happiness, which is the equivalent
I thought you were going to say the distillation of corporate America.
Yeah, it is that.
But the doctor goes to this house, and the guy, Alex, is like, oh, are you from social services already? Like, wow, my wife just went out 20 minutes ago. And he's like, is that what it says? And he looks at the psychic papers like, yeah, that's me.
Right, so Alex and whatever the mom's name was called in a service worker, I guess.
Yeah.
To sort out their kid. To put him in line.
Kind of.
To find out what's wrong with him.
They go in, and it looks like George... The doctor says the word for this, because Alex first gives him kind of a brief. He's like, George is afraid of everything. And the doctor says the word for this.
Pantophobia. Yeah.
The doctor's like, not the fear of pants. However, it's the fear of everything, which might include pants. So I guess it's kind of apt in that aspect.
Right.
For some reason, I remember that line the first time I watched this story.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So the doctor goes to meet George.
Yeah. And now that
Isn't one of the kids in it named George?
I don't remember.
Isn't the kid who gets sucked into the drain named George?
Don't remember. You got me there. I haven't watched the new one. I watched the original years ago.
I haven't watched either of them. But my friend watched it. He really liked it and told me all about it. So I don't know the plot, but
Stephen King is known for being elusive in interviews. People ask him about the horror in his story and how it all works, and he's just like, I don't know. Pays the bills though.
He's not wrong. Well, Stephen King also almost died that one time. I don't know if you knew this. He got run over by a van and almost died, and basically said he was going to quit writing when that happened. But then,
he ran out of money.
No, I don't remember what happened to make him start writing again. But the reason why he quit was because it was so painful to actually write with his injuries that he couldn't.
Yeah, I'm sure he transformed that into material for a story though. So.
Anyway, back to the topic at hand. The doctor's talking with George, and George is like, well, we got to save myself from the monsters. And the doctor's like, monsters are real. And I'm here to conquer the monsters. And he's about to open the closet when the door rings. And it's the landlord. He's like, I'm here for my rent. And I'm like, what asshole landlord comes for the rent at like freaking midnight?
Yeah. Apparently Purcell. Do you notice those sick all white Velcro shoes he was wearing?
I didn't.
You can get a real good shot of him when he's getting sucked into the floor. God, maybe this entire thing is just Stephen King reference after Stephen King reference because there's a getting sucked into the floor type thing.
Possibly.
And the one thing we find out, the scene where the doctor goes into George's room, is that, one, that George doesn't want to open the closet, which we knew, but that Alex is also on board with not opening the closet.
Yeah. Well, Amy and Rory also...
They wind up in like a dark house.
Yeah, you don't actually know exactly what happened to them, but they get in the elevator and it falls, and then they kind of go out, and Rory suspects that either the TARDIS is doing some sort of weird space nonsense, or they've been like sent back in time hundreds of years.
Yeah, they think they're in the 1700s for a while until they...
It's very ghost-like for a little while here.
Yeah. They come across a wooden pan painted to look like copper.
Yeah. Amy's like, this is kind of weird. They try to open the front door, but it's locked. Was barricaded.
Yeah.
You're always like, damn. They open the kitchen drawer and find a giant eyeball.
Yeah, so that's not too out of the ordinary. But then they no, I'm just kidding. But Alex doesn't want the doctor around anymore. He's had a change of heart.
Yeah, because the doctor gives away that he's not actually he's not actually a social worker because he starts making tea. And Alex is like, why are you making tea? We have a problem here. Why would you tell George that the monsters are real? Because he tells George the monsters are real, and that freaks George out. And Alex is like, well, that's not okay. And the doctor's like, look, I'm a Time Lord.
So I'm going to make tea. I'm kidding.
I live here now.
Like, you let me in. You did this, Alex. No.
Once you let me in, you can never get me out. I'm like a vampire. Once you invite me in, I can come in whenever I want. But he basically says, no, I'm going to make this tea. And look, I'm a Time Lord. I've traveled thousands of galaxies. I've lived for about 1,000 years. Monsters are real, Alex. Monsters are real. Alex is like,
So
well, okay.
Be very afraid, Alex.
Then they get this kind of funny scene where the doctor's like, I don't think we should open the closet. And Alex is like, no, we shouldn't open the closet. And the doctor's like, actually, I've had a change of heart. Let's open the closet and find out what's inside. And Alex is like, yeah, let's open the closet. And then the doctor's like, no, you madman. Why would we open the closet? And then Alex is like, you're right. We shouldn't open the closet.
I didn't get this scene at all. Was this like a reverse psychology type thing? Or like, what was going on here?
I don't know. I just thought it was like the most humorous part of this episode. I think it was to show that Alex is kind of a pushover, maybe.
Maybe.
That he needs to man up and take what's rightfully his from the world. I don't know what that means.
You mean like love his son?
I don't know what that sentence means.
Love his alien son?
Oh man, I don't know what that means.
Maybe he needs to pay his rent.
Maybe. Well, Purcell gets sucked into the floor in what I thought the most horrifying scene of this episode, because you actually see him like disappear into the floor, and it's really
we didn't mention that
uncomfortable.
Gosh, what is her name? Ritter or something like that? The old woman
lady
goes down to take the trash out, and we get the idea also that this is sort of a dilapidated area because they don't pick up the trash, and it looks a little bit run down. The rent is given as £325. I don't know how much that is in dollars, but I think it's like at least 800 at the time. I know the pound is severely weakened since last year, but at the time I think it was more than $2 to a pound.
2011.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the exchange rate history of the South African rand to the US dollar, which has fluctuated wildly over the past 15 years. When we moved here, it was 7 rand to the dollar, and I think when we went back last time, it was 14 rand to the dollar.
Wow, that's pretty bad.
Yeah. Then Zuma got ousted, and then I think it got as low as 10. I think it's back at 14 now, though. Anyway, that's your currency history for the day. Alex. The doctor opens the cupboard, the closet, and they get sucked in because George's like, no, don't open the closet, and he puts them in the closet, and the doctor's like, no, why are you doing this, George? You can stop this, no, and they get sucked in. I was like, you spoiled little brat.
What's cool about this scene, though, is as George is doing this, I guess, it looks like the room is getting smaller.
Right. Partially because of the way it's shot.
Yeah, so it definitely is the way it's shot. And it's almost as if, it's not that they're getting sucked into the closet. It's that the room is like
Eating
closing in on them, and the closet just happens to be, part of the room. They fall in or whatever. But they wind up in the same abandoned old dark house that Amy and Rory are in, that Purcell is in, that the old woman is in.
Purcell's not in there anymore because we should mention Amy and Rory were running around and Purcell is like, save me, and then a doll grabs him and turns him into a doll.
But I guess he survives. I guess they all survive.
They all survive, yeah. Nobody dies in this story.
Yeah.
And I think the wiki says this is the first story since Fear Her that nobody dies.
Wow. Was that the case in the classic show? I mean,
there were a couple episodes in the classic show where nobody died.
Yeah.
Age of Destruction comes to mind.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other ones too, but I can't.
Just go to our death count and skim through it. Look for where we wrote none. Purcell gets turned into a doll, as does Amy. Because Amy comes up with this brilliant plan. Instead of staying barricaded into this room that they were in, safe and sound, she's like, if we open the door, we'll surprise them and we can run out and run away. And I'm like, what? Why? You're like safe and sound inside here. Like, it doesn't look like we're going to break down the door anytime soon. And you can like regroup and think of like a better plan. But Rory, being the pushover he is because he married someone he waited 2,000 years for, just says yes and doesn't bring out obvious flaws in this plan.
Well, it's not even, they probably should have done something else. They had a window to break out of in that room I saw. But like, even like just the execution of the plan itself was also terrible. Like there are many ways they could have gone about this plan, and they did it in like the worst way possible, which is that they like brandished a mop and tried to ram it into the dolls.
As expected, it doesn't work.
Rory gets
free though. My man Rory breaking out.
Maybe he was like,
maybe that's why he went along with it.
What if he just turned around and was like, told you, and she gets turned into a doll?
Long live the king. Amy's just turning into a doll.
No. But yeah, that happens. Amy retains her red hair.
Although Purcell seems to go blonde.
Can't escape being a ginger that easily, Amy. I'm kidding.
Why would she want to escape being ginger?
Well, you're not ginger, so.
Well, neither are you, so.
No, I'm not, but I know.
Why do you know, though? How do you... What experience do you have that...
The ginger parts of my beard, so that qualifies.
Do you actually?
Yeah, I do.
It's been a while since you've had a beard, so I have to think about this.
Yeah, when it grows in enough, there's just sort of like small patches of ginger.
Yeah.
And blonde, weirdly enough.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I think you're right. Yeah, I mean, you are right. It's your beard, so you would know better than I would,
But no, I mean, I'm just kidding, obviously.
Are you, though?
No, I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, ginger jokes aren't funny to begin with, so...
The same as blonde jokes, too.
Yeah.
Anyway, the doctor and Alex are running around, and the doctor finally just realizes exactly what George is. He's like, he's a Tenza. I want to talk about the scene when we get to the end, because it's kind of... This scene is my problem with this story, and why I'm so conflicted about it.
Right. Seems like a pretty harmless scene to me.
Well, I think when I explain it, it'll make more sense. But I want to complete the plot of the story first, because I think it makes more sense in the context of the whole plot. But the doctor says he's a Tenza, which is like a cuckoo bird, although he pronounces it cuckoo, I think, or something like that.
He compares it to something else as well, I forget.
But if you don't know, the cuckoo bird lays its eggs in other birds' nests, and then when the bird hatches, it gets fed by the other bird because it's a baby. Yeah. And that's what George is a Tenza, which is apparently like an alien species that uses like a psychic filter to
assimilate itself into some other species' life. But it does so in like a non-menacing way.
Like the cuckoo bird.
I mean, because Alex and the wife character always wanted a child.
Yeah, the reason why the doctor figures this out, we kind of skipped this kind of important scene where the doctor he keeps saying he's missing something. And in my mind, I was like, you're missing the fact that Amy and Rory are freaking gone, dude.
He wanted them gone, though. He didn't know.
But he's looking at the family albums and he's like, I'm missing something. And he finally figures it out. He's like, look, George was born like in March, right? And Alex is like, yeah. And he's like, look, here's a Christmas picture of you and your wife right before he was born. She's not pregnant.
Right.
And then Alex kind of screams like, why are you doing this? And then he kind of screams, I know she's not pregnant. She can't have kids.
Yeah, so that's what finally sort of breaks the perception filter.
At least for the
and
doctor.
Realizes that, and this was a cool moment for me. I didn't see this coming at all. That George isn't, their real son. But what this...
Neither did I.
Yeah, so, I mean, but the Tenza, it seems like they, I guess, psychically connect with other species and assimilate themselves in a way that works out for everyone, right? He doesn't force himself into their lives. They always wanted a kid, and now they have one.
The doctor says something like he seeks out people... The Tenza babies seek out, people who wanted kids, who want kids.
Yeah.
And basically becomes their kid.
Yeah. And you assume, like, people who couldn't have kids for whatever reason, right? Not like, oh, we're going to have a kid soon. It's like, nope, here's this Tenza instead.
Yeah, so the doctor kind of explains it to Alex while they're in the dollhouse, and then he says, look, the Tenza are like psychic. More than likely what's happened here is he's taken all of his fears and done exactly what your wife told him to do, which is put them like physically in the closet.
Right.
Like it was supposed to be sort of a like psychological kind of thing, like put them in the closet. But because he's a Tenza, has become kind of like an actual thing.
Yeah.
Alex is like, oh, I see. And the doctor's like, look, all this stuff is made of wood. We're clearly in the dollhouse, which is in the closet.
Yeah. So all the dolls are sort of coming after them, ready to kill them.
They run into Rory, and the doctor's like, where's Amy? And Rory kind of just points at this doll behind him, and the doctor's like, oh, I see.
Eventually, they start running up the stairs.
George gets sucked into the dollhouse, too.
Right, yep. And there's a scene where they start running up the stairs. It's very tense. They're about to die.
They're running up the stairs, and then the dolls that are chasing Rory are coming down, and he's like,
Yeah.
oh, no.
And the only thing that can break them out is Alex reassuring George that they're not going to send him away anywhere.
Yeah,
that was his last fear.
Yeah, that's his biggest fear, and that's what instigated all this. Because the doctor's like, Alex, what's the biggest fear a child has? It's being not accepted by their parents or being rejected by their parents, right? And he's like, but he's an alien. And the doctor's like, he's your son. And then Alex is like, you're right. It doesn't matter what he is. And then there's this pretty awesome scene. I really like the scene because it's in slow-mo and Alex is like pushing all the dolls out of the way. So the dolls are closing in on George. And Alex's fatherly instinct kicks in. He's like, gotta save my son. And he runs in and he pushes all the dolls out of the way. He picks up his son and is like, no matter what you are, you're my son.
Yeah, and that breaks the effect. Everyone wakes up.
All fine and normal.
Yeah, the old woman wakes up in a pile of garbage.
Well, I guess they wake up where they got sucked in.
Yep, because she fell into that pile of garbage.
Because Amy and Rory wake up in the elevator.
Yeah. And this is kind of cheesy. I mean, they're like, whatever happens, you're my son, whoever you are, whatever the
I guess
he
a
says.
little.
But yeah, it works, I guess.
A little, but I really enjoyed it. I liked it. And then the wife comes home.
Okay.
Yeah, she's like,
I guess you think Alex is going to tell his wife about any of this?
no.
Yeah,
Maybe.
me neither. Yeah, me neither.
But no.
I don't think he is either.
She's got to keep it a secret between him and George.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a white lie type thing. She doesn't really benefit from knowing.
Yeah. Until she realizes she can't have kids and has a mental breakdown because all of a sudden she has a kid. She's like, wait a minute. Where did this kid come from? Then
That's why George has to just keep on point with that perception filter.
Yeah, George, don't mess up.
As the doctor's leaving, he says the symptoms might recur in puberty.
In puberty. Doc's like, but you can never really tell,
So good luck with that. I'm just going to
I'm going to leave now. Bye.
They seem to be okay.
Yeah, the wife comes home and George is kind of sitting on the counter eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. She's like, wow, what's going on?
Peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
Oh, yeah, it's just what I guessed it was. It was a sandwich of some
I'm going to say no
sort.
because they live in the UK where they don't really, I think, eat peanut butter that much. As far as I know.
I don't know. I'm not going to write my dissertation
I don't know either.
on differences in peanut consumption between the US and the UK.
They definitely don't call it jelly.
No. That's
a US only thing. AKA the right thing to do. Kidding.
There's actually like a very specific difference between jams, jellies, and preserves, and like they're not actually interchangeable terms.
Yeah. Well, here in the US, yeah. I know in like the UK, they don't even use the term jelly. So something that we here would call jelly, they would just also call jam. Yeah.
Because there's a difference between a preserve and a jam.
Yes. There's also a chutney. Don't forget, you also got to throw chutney into the mix.
You're right. Mustn't forget chutney, the weird cousin to the other three.
No, it's like it's the next
level of evolution.
Yeah, it's the next step up from preserve. Yeah.
All right. Sure. But Doctor and Amy and Roy just kind of leave. And they get the nursery rhyme about the doctor dying, and then
you zoom in on the doctor's sort of death plaque or whatever it is.
Yeah. And that's it.
And I mean, I know you have some stuff to say, but I just thought this episode was middle of the road, you know?
I mean, I'm conflicted. Because this is the episode, and this week is when I really realized this, because this is something I've been trying to articulate or put into words for quite a while now, what I feel like my biggest issue with the reboot is, and I finally realized it in this story, is that the Doctor a lot of the episodes resolve themselves because the Doctor just knows the alien species he's dealing with. And that's been like, when was the last time in the reboot specifically the Doctor encountered an alien species he didn't know?
Midnight for sure. There was
Midnight.
There was one this season where he's like, I have no idea what this is.
When?
It was in The Doctor's Wife where he doesn't like really know where he is.
There was that, and then there's Midnight, and then like it's difficult to pinpoint episodes where the Doctor doesn't know what he's dealing with, and I feel like, to me, it's starting to feel a little grating because it starts to feel like, as soon as the Doctor figures out what alien species is hiding behind the curtains, so to speak, the episode's over because he knows how to defeat them. Like, the episodes to me are so much more interesting when the Doctor doesn't know what he's dealing with, and he doesn't know how to beat them.
Vincent and the Doctor is another one where he has to look up the alien.
Yeah, but still, it's like someone he knows exactly how to defeat them.
Yeah, that's, in some ways, that's part of the charm of it, too, is like, the Doctor's this guy who, well, we do get, that a lot of time has passed since the classic show and the new series.
Right.
There's also, part of this, like, charm is like, all right, once the Doctor knows who it is, he's going to find a way to save the day and no one's going to get hurt. Or, like, in theory, no one's going to get hurt.
In theory, but at the same time, it like always puts these writers in a difficult place because they can't like make the alien species super prominent for the first quarter or half of the episode, because if the Doctor figures out who it is immediately, the episode's basically over. And that's the thing, is that all these episodes are basically structured such that as soon as the Doctor figures out who it is, the episode is basically over. Like in this one, as soon as the Doctor figures out George is a Tenza, all that happens is he tells Alex, hey, you got to make sure your kid knows that you still want him, and then that's it. That's the end.
Well, I mean, I don't think so, because that's not like the climax of the story is when he figures that out. There's still more to the story.
Whether there's more or not is, I'm not saying that's the climax of the story. I'm saying that the story, like...
Yeah, you're saying it's over at that point, which in this episode specifically, you can point to this one, it's obviously not over. Like not the turning point, but like this is one way to read the episode, I guess, is that what this builds up to is that moment where George and Alex, have this moment, and it breaks them out of the dollhouse.
But I mean, I'm not using over in the sense that it's the climax of the story. I'm saying over in the terms that like there's no more suspense, there's no more tension really, because the Doctor knows immediately how to defeat them, and at that point it's just your enjoyment comes from seeing.
I think there's still the tension there because, well, it's Doctor Who, so he's going to go embrace the kid, but like there's also like, all right, what's he going to do? Is he going to accept this alien child,
I don't know. I just find it really boring and repetitive when the Doctor knows who he's facing every week, because at that point, it just starts to get like repetitive, even though it's a different alien species. It's just like the formula starts to become pretty repetitive too. Is that, the formula is, all right, aliens doing something wacky somewhere. Doctor lands, we realizes something wacky is up. big reveal of who the alien is. Oh, Doctor knows the alien. Doctor knows how to defeat the alien. Doctor puts plan in motion. Episode over.
The classic show was that formulaic as well.
I mean, I'm not saying the
way,
classic show
like,
wasn't that formulaic, but I'm saying that this is a problem that's become more prevalent in the reboot, and that's part of the reason why I liked Midnight, was because the Doctor had no freaking clue what the hell a Midnight Entity was.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with what you're saying. It is a formula, for sure.
Formulas aren't bad. I should make that clear. Formulas aren't necessarily bad. However, I feel like the reboot is getting repetitive with this formula.
I mean, I agree with that to some extent. I just don't think that, like, at that turning point, the episodes get necessarily more boring.
I mean, I guess it just depends, really. I mean, because you can do interesting things after that reveal, but so often that reveal comes like 3/4 of the way through the episode, where there's like the amount of time left in the episode is like not enough for them to do something interesting. Or that reveal is in an episode written by someone who doesn't have the skill of like Moffat or Russell T or someone like Toby Whithouse, who like actually knows how to develop the plot after that big reveal. Like, I don't know. Sometimes that reveal happens in an episode written by someone who's like never written Doctor Who before, and then like it comes in a Pip and Jane Baker story, and it's like, once that reveal happens, then they just, mess around for 2 episodes, right? I don't know. It just kind of frustrates me because it feels like also maybe they're becoming a little complacent because they're like, oh, we can just do the same formula over and over. When like, I want to see new aliens. I want to see something that the Doctor doesn't know what it is, because that provides a different kind of conflict in that now it's not the Doctor trying to figure out who it is, but like trying to figure out what they're doing and what's special about this alien species. I don't know.
So like the classic show.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's kind of why I was like excited. Everyone was like, oh, Chris Chibnall said there's going to be no recurring monsters in his first season. All the monsters are going to be...
that's what Stephen Moffat said too.
New.
Didn't he?
No.
No?
Stephen Moffat didn't say that. Stephen Moffat just said he's cutting ties with the Russell T era. Chris Chibnall was like, look, there's going to be no monsters that have appeared on Doctor Who before at all. There'll be nothing. It's going to be all new. And everyone was like, well, that's dumb. You got to have the Daleks. You got to have the Cybermen. It's like, no, I want new monsters. I don't want them to reuse the same monsters every week.
There's the monster of racism that people really railed into and said shouldn't be a part of the show.
Which still blows my mind.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I just feel like it's becoming repetitive.
Oh, yeah. It for sure is.
And
I like it. All the more for that.
Do you?
Yeah. Yeah, I do, actually.
All right. To each their own. I mean, that's why... This is just my final statement on this. I was going to end it right there, but I was like, that's why the next 2 episodes I really like, because they're like the Doctor doesn't know what's going on.
The next episode preview has a really funny line. They're like... the next episode looks really cool, by the way. Just from the preview. But one of the lines is, if they touch you, you'll fall asleep. And it's at this like really dramatic moment in the preview, and there's this music playing, and you think it's going to be if they touch you, you die. But no, it's if they touch you, you fall asleep. Which might not. That might be a good thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
You have to wait and see.
Yeah.
But until then, if you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry events, love letters, your thoughts on Night Terrors and Mark Gatiss. You can find us on Apple Podcasts at Trust Your Doctor. You can find us on Google Play at Trust Your Doctor. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're watching The Girl Who Waited. But until then, the end.